You're scrolling through your bank account on a Sunday night and something feels off. You make decent money. You're not reckless with it. You don't buy a new car every year or blow thousands at the casino. You're just normal, average even. You do what everyone else does. You keep money in your regular savings account earning 0.01% interest. You have a 401k that you contribute to because HR told you to. You finance things at competitive rates. You're doing everything you're supposed to do. So why does it feel like you're running on a treadmill that's slowly speeding up while you're getting more and more tired? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Being average with your money is one of the most expensive financial decisions you'll ever make. And unlike the taxes that show up on your paycheck, this one's invisible. You can't see it being deducted. There's no line item, but it's costing you tens of thousands of dollars every single year. And if you're young enough, it'll cost you millions over your lifetime. My name is Dexon, and I spend way too much time thinking about why smart people make average financial decisions that slowly drain their wealth. If you're someone who feels like you're doing everything right with money but still can't get ahead, or you're making good income but have this nagging feeling that you should have more to show for it, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because what I'm about to show you is probably going to make you a little angry at first, but then it's going to change how you think about every financial decision you make. Here's the thing. We're taught that average is safe, average is responsible. If you do what everyone else does with money, you won't make catastrophic mistakes. And that's technically true. You probably won't lose everything by being average. But here's what most people don't realize. In finance, average doesn't mean you're keeping pace. It means you're falling behind. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Right now, as I'm recording this, the average American has about $4,200 in their savings account. Now, that savings account is probably earning them somewhere between 0.01% and maybe 0.5% interest annually at a traditional big bank. Let's be generous and say it's 0.5%. That means on $4,200, they're earning $21 per year, less than $2 a month. You literally find more money than that in your couch cushions. Meanwhile, inflation over the past few years has been running around 3 to 4% annually. Let's call it 3.5% to be conservative. That means the purchasing power of that $4,200 is decreasing by about $147 every single year. So you're earning $21 while losing $147 in purchasing power. Net loss, $126 per year. And you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't make a bad investment. You didn't gamble it away. You just did what everyone else does. You put it in a savings account at a normal bank. Now you might be thinking, okay, Dexon, $126 a year isn't that much. I spend more than that on coffee. And you're right. In isolation, it's not life-changing money. But here's where it gets interesting. That's just your savings account. Now let's talk about the average tax on everything else. The average American who participates in their employer's 401k contributes about 7% of their salary, and their employer matches around 3%. So let's say you make $60,000 a year. You're putting in $4,200, your employer adds $1,800, so you've got $6,000 going into your retirement account annually. Most people just select the target date fund that has their retirement year in the name, right? It's easy, it's automatic, it's what the plan administrator recommends. That target date fund probably has an expense ratio of around 0.5% to 0.75%. Doesn't sound like much, but on a growing balance over 30 years, that 0.75% expense ratio compared to a 0.03% expense ratio on a basic index fund costs you approximately $64,000 on that $6,000 annual contribution. $64,000. That's an entire year of your salary just evaporated because you chose the average default option instead of spending 15 minutes understanding expense ratios. But wait, there's more. The average person finances their car. The average auto loan interest rate right now is hovering around 7% for new cars, higher for used. Let's say you finance a $30,000 car over 5 years at 7%. You'll pay about $5,600 in interest. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a car. I'm not even saying you shouldn't finance one if you need to. But here's the thing. The average person does this every 5 to 7 years. They're always in an auto loan. They pay off one car, drive it for a year or two, then trade it in and finance another one. So over a 30-year period, that's 5 cars, 5 loans, approximately $28,000 in interest paid. What does the above average person do? They buy a reliable used car, finance it if necessary, but then they drive it into the ground. 10, 12, 15 years. They replace it when it truly needs replacing, not when the new model looks cool. The difference? Somewhere around $40,000 to $50,000 over those 30 years. And we haven't even talked about credit cards yet. Oh man, credit cards. The average American credit card debt is about $6,000. The average APR is over 20%. If you're paying the minimum payment on $6,000 at 20% interest, you're paying about $100 a month, and it'll take you about 9 years to pay it off, during which you'll have paid approximately $6,800 in interest, almost $6,900 to borrow $6,000. Now look, I know sometimes debt happens. Medical emergencies, job loss, life circumstances. I'm not judging anyone for being in debt. But the average person carries this balance for years, making minimum payments, because that's just what you do, right? Everyone has credit card debt. Except that everyone doesn't have to have $6,000 in credit card debt at 20% interest for 9 years. So let's add this up so far. We've got $126 a year lost to inflation on your savings. That's about $3,800 over 30 years. But actually, it's much more because as your savings grow, that gap grows. Let's conservatively call it $10,000 over your working life. We've got $64,000 lost to high expense ratios in your retirement account. We've got $28,000 in unnecessary auto loan interest. We've got $6,800 in credit card interest. We're already at over $100,000. And I haven't even mentioned the big one yet. Housing. This is where the average tax gets absolutely brutal. The average American buys a home with a 30-year mortgage. Right now, mortgage rates are floating around 7%. Let's say you buy a $400,000 home with 10% down, so you're financing $360,000. Over 30 years at 7%, you'll pay approximately $498,000 in interest, nearly $500,000 in interest on a 360 loan. Now, home ownership can be a great wealth building tool. I'm not anti-mortgage, but here's what the average person doesn't do. They don't make extra principal payments. They don't refinance when rates drop. They don't consider a 15-year mortgage instead of a 30-year. They don't house hack by renting out a room. They just sign the papers and make the minimum payment for 3 decades. An above average approach to that same mortgage, making just one extra payment per year toward principal, cuts about 6 years off the loan and saves you approximately $122,000 in interest. One extra payment per year. That's about $2,400 annually on a 360 loan. Most people making enough to afford a $400,000 home can find $2,400 a year. They just don't because the average person doesn't think about it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Dexton, you're cherry picking. You're taking worst case scenarios and adding them all up. And fair enough. Not everyone has all of these problems simultaneously. But here's the reality. Most people have at least 3 or 4 of them. And even if you just had the retirement account expense ratio issue and the mortgage issue, you're still looking at almost $200,000 over your lifetime. $200,000 that you worked for, that you earned, that you paid taxes on, and then you just gave away because you did what everyone else does. This is the hidden tax of being average. And the worst part? It's completely optional. You're not being taxed by the government. You're not being robbed. You're making voluntary financial decisions that slowly, quietly transfer your wealth to banks, credit card companies, fund managers, and car dealerships. And because everyone around you is making the same decisions, it feels normal. It feels like just the cost of living. But it's not. It's the cost of financial averageness. Here's what makes this so insidious. Being average feels safe. It feels responsible. If you're doing what your coworkers do, what your neighbors do, what your parents did, how can you be wrong? There's safety in numbers, right? Except here's the thing about averages in finance. The average person retires with less than $200,000 saved. The average person has essentially no emergency fund. The average person is stressed about money well into their 60s and 70s. So when you aim for average financial behavior, you're aiming for average financial outcomes. And average financial outcomes in America are pretty damn bleak. Now look, I know what some of you are thinking. But Dexton, not everyone can be above average. That's how averages work. And mathematically, you're correct. But here's the beautiful thing about financial averages. They're not bell curves. They're not evenly distributed. In a normal distribution, yeah, 50% are above average and 50% are below average. But in finance, the behaviors that put you above average aren't complicated. They're not reserved for the wealthy or the highly educated. They're simple decisions that most people just don't make because they're slightly less convenient than the default option. Let me give you the actual playbook for paying less of this hidden tax. And I want to be clear, none of this requires you to be a genius, to have a finance degree, or to spend hours every day managing money. It requires you to be slightly less average. That's it. First, your savings account. Stop using big traditional banks for savings. I'm serious. That 0.01% interest rate is insulting. There are online high-yield savings accounts right now offering 4 to 5% interest. FDIC insured, same safety as your big bank. The only difference is you can't walk into a physical branch, which you probably never do anyway. On that same $4,200 at 4.5%, you're earning about $190 a year instead of 21, and you're actually keeping pace with inflation instead of losing to it. This takes 15 minutes to set up, one time. 15 minutes to stop bleeding money every single year for the rest of your life. Second, your retirement account. Log into your 401k right now. Look at what you're invested in. Look at the expense ratio. If it's above 0.2%, you're paying too much. Switch to a low-cost index fund. Every single major 401k provider has them. Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, they all have total market index funds with expense ratios under 0.05%. If your plan doesn't offer low-cost index funds, that's a conversation to have with HR. And in the meantime, contribute enough to get your full employer match, then open a Roth IRA and use that for additional savings with lower fees. This is a one-time decision that saves you tens of thousands of dollars. Third, debt. If you have high-interest debt, credit cards, personal loans, whatever, treat it like a financial emergency. Because it is. Every month you carry a balance at 20% interest, you're setting your money on fire. I don't care if you have to pick up a side hustle for 6 months. I don't care if you have to sell stuff. I don't care if your budget gets uncomfortably tight. The average tax you pay on that debt is so high that almost any sacrifice to eliminate it is worth it. And once it's gone, take the minimum payment you were making and redirect it to building a 3 to 6 month emergency fund in that high-yield savings account so you never have to go back into that debt again. Fourth, cars. Buy used. Buy reliable. Drive it forever. I know. Everyone wants a nice car. I get it. But here's the reality. A 3-year-old Toyota Camry with 40,000 miles on it will last you another 200,000 miles, costs half what a new one does, and will save you so much money in payments, interest, insurance, and depreciation that you'll actually be able to afford other things you want, things that don't depreciate the second you sign the paperwork. The average person has a car payment their entire adult life. The above-average person has a car payment for 4 years and then doesn't have one for the next 10. Guess who has more money? Fifth, housing. If you have a mortgage, look at your interest rate. If it's above 6% and rates have dropped, consider refinancing. If you're in the market for a home, run the numbers on a 15-year mortgage versus a 30-year. Yes, the payment is higher, but the amount of interest you save is staggering. And if a 15-year payment is truly unaffordable, then get the 30-year, but commit to making extra principal payments. Even small additional payments make a huge difference over time. An extra $100 a month toward principal on a $360,000 loan at 7% saves you about $100,000 in interest and cuts 7 years off your loan. And if you're really ambitious, house hack. Rent out a room, rent out a basement unit, buy a duplex and live in one half. The average person thinks their home should cost them money. The above average person makes their home pay them. Here's the thing that I need you to understand. Every single one of these decisions is simple. None of them require you to be a stock-picking genius or a real estate mogul or an entrepreneur. They're boring. They're unsexy. They're the financial equivalent of flossing your teeth. Nobody gets excited about flossing, but people who floss have fewer cavities, keep their teeth longer, and spend less money at the dentist. It's the same with these financial decisions. They're small, boring, slightly inconvenient changes that compound into massive differences over time. And compounding is the key word here, because just like compound interest works in your favor when you're investing, compound averageness works against you when you're not. That $126 you lose to inflation in your savings account this year isn't just $126. It's $126 that could have been invested, that could have grown, that could have compounded for decades. Every dollar you pay in unnecessary interest is a dollar that can't be invested for your future. Every high fee you pay in your retirement account is reducing your compounding growth. The hidden tax of being average isn't just what you lose today, it's what you lose tomorrow and next year, and in 30 years when all of these small losses have compounded into enormous missed opportunities. There's a concept in economics called opportunity cost. It's the value of what you give up when you make a choice. When you choose to keep your savings in a 0.01% account instead of a 4.5% account, the opportunity cost isn't just a difference in interest you earn, it's everything that money could have done for you. When you choose to pay minimum payments on high interest debt for years, the opportunity cost is every investment return you missed out on because that money was going to interest instead. When you choose high fee investment funds because they're the default option, the opportunity cost is the compounding growth that fee ate away at. The average person doesn't think about opportunity cost. They think about what they have to do today, right now, to get by. And that's why they stay average. The above average person thinks about what their decisions today cost them in the future. Not in a stressed out, anxiety ridden way, just in a clear eyed, honest way that says, I'm going to spend 15 minutes to move my savings to a high yield account because I don't want to light money on fire for the next 40 years. And here's the beautiful part. Once you make these changes, they're mostly automatic. You set up the high yield savings account once. You change your retirement fund allocation once. You adopt a different philosophy about debt and cars and housing, and then you just execute on it. You're not sitting there every day making difficult decisions. You made the difficult decision once, and now you're just reaping the benefits month after month, year after year. I want to be really clear about something. I'm not saying you have to be perfect with money. I'm not saying you can never finance anything or enjoy your income or buy something just because it makes you happy. I'm saying you should do those things intentionally, not by default. The average person finances a brand new car because everyone finances cars and new cars are nice. The above average person might still finance a car, but they do it with a clear understanding of what it costs. They get the best interest rate possible and have a plan to pay it off quickly. The average person has lifestyle creep where every raise just gets absorbed into slightly nicer stuff with no thought. The above average person decides consciously, I got a raise. I'm going to increase my lifestyle by 20% and increase my savings rate by 80% of this raise. Same destination, completely different financial outcome. This is about awareness. This is about making active choices instead of passive ones. Because here's the reality. Somebody is going to get your money. Either you're going to keep it, invest it, and let it work for you, or you're going to give it to banks, credit card companies, fund managers, and salespeople through 1,000 small average decisions. And unlike actual taxes where you at least get roads and schools and a military, the hidden tax of being average gets you nothing except the privilege of staying average. I think the reason more people don't escape this trap is because it requires you to admit that some of the things you've been doing, things that feel normal and safe and responsible, are actually costing you money. And that's uncomfortable. It's way easier to believe that you're just doing what you're supposed to do, and the reason you're not getting ahead is because everything is expensive and wages are stagnant and the system is rigged. And look, some of that is true. Things are expensive. Wages haven't kept pace with productivity. The system has problems. But you know what doesn't help? Making it worse by voluntarily giving away thousands of dollars every year to financial institutions because you chose the default option. You have more control than you think. Not over everything, not over the economy or inflation or tax policy, but over your own financial decisions? Yeah, you have a lot of control there. And the gap between average financial decisions and above average ones isn't huge. It's not like you have to become a minimalist living in a van or work 80 hours a week or never enjoy anything. You just have to be slightly more intentional, slightly less passive, slightly more willing to spend 15 minutes doing something that will save you $15,000. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one thing from this video, just one. Move your savings to a high yield account. Check your retirement fund expense ratios. Make an extra mortgage payment this year. Attack your highest interest debt like it's an emergency. Just one thing. Do it this week. And once you've done it, once you've seen how simple it actually is, come back and pick another one. You don't have to overhaul your entire financial life overnight. You just have to stop being average in one area, and then another, and then another. Because here's the truth. The hidden tax of being average isn't just costing you money. It's costing you options. It's costing you freedom. It's costing you the ability to retire when you want, work less if you want, help your kids if you want, pursue opportunities when they come up. Every dollar you pay in unnecessary fees and interest and lost growth is a dollar that could have bought you choices. And at the end of the day, that's what money is: stored choices. The average person spends their entire life storing choices and then watching them evaporate through 1,000 leaks. The above average person plugs the leaks and watches their choices compound. You're not stuck being average with money. You're choosing it, probably without realizing it, because it's the path of least resistance. But the path of least resistance in finance leads to the same place for everyone: working longer than you want to, stressing about money more than you should, and wondering why you don't have more to show for decades of work. You don't have to go down that path. You just have to be willing to veer off it even slightly. That's all it takes. If this video made you think differently about your own financial decisions, subscribe to the channel because we're going to keep breaking down the invisible ways money works, so you can stop paying hidden taxes you don't owe. And leave a comment telling me which one of these you're going to tackle first. I read them all, and I'm genuinely curious which one resonates most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.